So shall I begin, Ananda Vihari?
Yes, 7:15, we can begin.
Okay, what time is it now? Is it 7:15? Okay, what time is it now?
7:15, we can go.
7:15, so let the games begin.
Yeah.
Everybody's been admitted into the hospital here, the hospital of soul. Hare Krishna, please accept my obeisances, all great souls on this call. So today we are reading from the glorious Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 15, verses 22 and 23. So I'll read the Sanskrit and the English, and then we'll do the purport and have a discussion here. Grihito lilaya strinam samaksham krita kilbisha mahish matyam sanirudho mukto jena kapiryataha. When Ravana attempted to insult Karta Vira Arjuna in the presence of the women and offended him, Karta Vira Arjuna easily arrested Ravan and put him in custody in the city of Mahishmati. Just as one captures a monkey and then released him neglectfully. Verse 23, Sa ekada tu margayam vicharam vijane vane yadrichaya shramapadam yamadagner upavishat. Once, while Kartavira Arjuna was wandering unengaged in a solitary forest and hunting, he approached the residence of Jamadagni. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Kartavira Arjuna had no business going to the residence of Jamadagni, but because he was puffed up by his extraordinary power, he went there and offended Parashuram. This was the prelude to his being killed by Parashuram for his offensive act. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharne Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Pashyatadi Shtarne Om Jnana Timirandasya Ganangana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Gena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karati Vachanam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamahang Vande Shri Gurun Dinatanam Vanshakalpatrubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So good morning, all exalted souls. Please pray that I may speak something that is beneficial and represent Srila Prabhupada. Thank you. So today's verse, the context is it's fascinating, and it's resonates with or coincides with what's happening in the world today and what has happened throughout history, because history repeats itself, especially in the material world, where the same tendencies towards dominating material nature by nefarious men, nefarious beings with their own inflated sense of self-pride, creates chaos in society. So the context here is that this king, Kartavira Arjuna, he had become very powerful. Just like we have the Marvel superheroes, Superman and Batman and Spider-Man, and superpowers are desirable by the living entity. Generally, these modern day Marvel comic characters are not prone to perform great austerities to gain their superpowers. But we we understand from the Vedic literatures that these superpowers are available by dint of performing great austerities to please super empowered beings that are the Supreme Lord or his empowered representatives. So in this case, this king Karta Vira Arjuna, he performed great sacrifices and austerities and satisfied Lord Dattatreya, and he was benedicted with 1,000 arms. Personally, I don't know if I'd like 1,000 arms, but back in the day, that was very desirable. And just from a practical standpoint, we can see that by having thousands of arms, one can protect oneself from all sides and wield powerful weapons. And so this was the nature of the desire to have 1,000 arms, to be invincible. What happens when a person develops these powers is their tendency is to become very proud and very arrogant. And this Kartavira Arjuna, he became deeply infected by this arrogance, so much so that he thought he was invincible. It's very similar to Hiranyakasipu. It's a kind of a similar paradigm where he tried to circumvent the inevitable destiny of death by praying for certain benedictions to become immortal, and he became very, very powerful. Just so happens that powerful people like this, when they see other people that have some extra power, they are power more than them, they become very disturbed because they want to be God. That is the tendency. Aham mameti, I am all powerful, I am supreme. So he came upon the ashram of one Jamadagni, a great saint, whose youngest son was Parashuram. And this Jamadagni, he offered very wonderful reception to Kartavira Arjuna, to him and his men. But this king, because his heart was hard, he was essentially a sociopath, psychopath. They have very little empathy for others. They're only interested in their own gain and to dominate according to their own desires. So his heart was not soft, even though the sage Jamadagni offered him a beautiful reception. All he could see was that he had this great opulence. He had a Kamandenu cow. And we know that a Kamandenu cow is the desire cow that's very famous in the spiritual world. One can approach these cows and get whatever desire one wants for the service of the Lord. So in this case, this Kartavira Arjuna, all he could see was that this king had this cow and he wanted this cow because he saw that this Jamadagni, this great sage, was more powerful than him because he had this great jewel of this desire-fulfilling cow. So he encouraged his men to steal the cow. And this was a great offense, not only to Jamadagni, but to his son, Parashuram, who was the incarnation of the Lord. So Prabhupada describes here very, very nicely. Prabhupada says, because he was puffed up by his extraordinary power, he went there and offended Parashuram. This was the prelude to his being killed for his offensive act by Parashuram. So what is a prelude? A prelude is an introductory performance, an event or an action preceding a more important event. So what was that important event what was the setup to? This was a setup to Lord Parashuram destroying the pride of the very powerful but arrogant Kshatriya kings that were causing so much havoc in the world. So we see that there's always a class of men, a class of beings, could be men or women, generally a class of men, but we see it goes across the spectrum of gender, who believe that they are indestructible, who believe that they're above the law, by dint of their extraordinary wealth, influence, power. They wish to rule over the world and the population of the world and dominate people according to their vision of reality, not according to the Lord's vision, but their vision. So this is not a new phenomenon. We can see the Hiranyakasipus of the world. We can see all throughout the Vedic literatures, and we can see in modern times, there are the Mughal kings, Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, Napoleon, Hitler. These are all men that were infected by the sociopathic demonic mentality of wanting to dominate, just like Hitler. He saw that he was so distorted, he took the Vedic literatures and he twisted them for his own purposes. He took aspects of the Vedic literatures and he wanted to create the Aryan race, the supreme race. Of course, we understand what real Aryan is, one who is infused with Brahminical qualities by dint of service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These are the true Aryans. But he had a distorted vision, and he wanted to create the Ubermensch, or the Superman, the Aryan Superman. And then there was the Mensch, the regular men and women who would serve the will of the Superman. And then there were the parasitic vermin, which were the Jews, the Russians, the homosexuals, the disabled, and he wanted to eliminate them. So we see that this tendency has gone on since time immemorial. And we also can see that Krishna, being the Supreme Personality of Godhead and being all compassionate, will not let these beings get away with this for too long. Krishna, he allows the demon the mirage of superpower, the mirage of, or the appearance of such superiority, but it's a trap. He lets them experience this for some time, but he sets the trap for them. And we see in history, we see what happened to Hiranyakasipu. He was destroyed by the Lord in the form of Lord Nrsimhadev. We see what happened to all the Napoleons, the Hitlers. They all became ashes in the dump of history, in the dump of destiny, because they did not recognize the superiority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we see that in this day and age, as Srila Prabhupada mentioned, that, and we can see by doing research, that there are essentially 13 controlling families that control all the events of the world. Prabhupada stated this. He said there are very powerful, but he actually stated 13 controlling families. And if you go on the website of it's actually hiding in plain sight. You can go on CIA.gov and you'll find the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati. So even the demons, they bring this information out for the general mass to understand, for those who wish to see it. And we can see that there is this tendency to control and dominate the entire population for nefarious means. And I could speak more about this, but we're just going to go into general tendencies. So this is happening now in the world today. There is this tendency to want to dominate the entire populace. And because there is so much advanced development of technology, it is much easier to do this now. Just like in China, we have a total surveillance state. They can determine within a matter of a few seconds where anybody is at any time, because there's hundreds of thousands of surveillance cameras. And people in China, if they don't act and live according to the government mandates, there's a social credit system where their social credit will be diminished. They won't be able to board a train, a plane, get groceries, have money in their account. Everything is controlled by Big Brother. This is 1984 on steroids. And we can see that tendency is happening all over the world. So in this verse, we see that this was a prelude to Lord Parashuram coming in and chopping the demonic king. So we can also see that in our own lives, we have these tendencies. Before I go into that, I just want to share what Lord Krishna says about these demonic tendencies so we can recognize them in others and in ourselves. So Krishna describes this very succinctly in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Divine and Demonic Natures. I'll read some of these verses, and then we'll kind of look at these and turn the lens inward. So Krishna says, O son of Prita, in this world, there are two kinds of created beings. One is called divine and the other demonic. I have already explained the divine qualities. Now I will hear from me of the demonic. Those who are demonic do not know what is to be done, what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior is found in them. They say that this world is unreal with no foundation, with no God in control. They say it is produced of sex desire and has no cause other than lust. Following such conclusions, the demonic, who are lost to themselves and who have no intelligence, engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. This has been happening since time immemorial, and we should not think that it is not happening now or in the future. The demon class will always be there, the sociopathic, psychopathic class. Taking shelter of insatiable lust and absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige, the demonic, thus illusioned, are always sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent. They believe that to gratify the senses is the prime necessity of human civilization. No, it's not, but that's what they believe. Thus, until the end of life, their anxiety is immeasurable, bound by a network of hundreds of thousands of desires and absorbed in lust and anger. They secure money by illegal means for sense gratification, just like we have Afghanistan, which we've spent trillions of dollars on. And the people of Afghanistan had nothing to do with harming America. But what was in Afghanistan? The poppy fields and the natural gas. So this is Krishna's alluding to that. And this has gone all on throughout history, that the government says one thing, but it's actually meant for something else. They secure money by illegal means for sense gratification because the poppy fields produce the heroin, which fuels all the nefarious activities of the demons. The demonic person thinks, so much wealth do I have today. I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. He is my enemy, and I've killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. This is how Kartavira Arjuna was thinking. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance, thus perplexed by various anxieties and bound by a network of illusions. They become too strongly attached to sense enjoyment and fall down into hell. Self-complacent, always impudent, deluded by wealth and false prestige, they sometimes proudly perform sacrifices in name only, without following any rules and regulations. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, the demons become envious of who? The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies and the bodies of others, and blaspheme against the real religion. So Krishna spells it out. And these people are existing. And Kartavira Arjuna, he was such a person. And he met his match, and he crossed the red line of offending a saintly person. And this enraged his son, Parashram. And Parashram ultimately killed him and all the demonic kings. So what I want to look at now is, how do we see this in our own lives? If we turn the lens inward, if we're honest with ourselves, and if I'm honest with myself, I can see, and we can see if we reflect, how many problems we have created in our lives, in our relationships, in the society of devotees, as a result of a false sense of pride. I know that looking at my own life, I can see that there's been difficulties in relationships when I did not keep my pride in check. Difficulties, whether it's in the home, in the husband, wife, and friends, and in a team group in terms of work or in terms of a devotional team. Pride is a great enemy. What are the symptoms of pride? Well, first of all, pride is this overinflated sense of self-importance. It's an unreasonable sense of superiority, our own superiority, being better than others. It manifests often as contempt of others. Subtly, this can come about. The symptoms of pride are often taking everything personally, that it's all about me. Fault finding in others. We know that this is a great disease for the devotees. To fault find, create Vaishnava aparadha, destroys our bhakti lata. Thinking that we are better than others, lack of self-reflection and humility, ignorance or inattentiveness to the needs of others, and addiction to attention. So these are symptoms of pride that, if we're honest with ourselves, of course, we can see them in the demonic class, and we should note them because this type of mentality will cause the destruction of the social fabric and create great unhappiness and upheaval in society. But if we turn it in, look inward, we can see that it can create great upheaval and unhappiness in our own life and in our relationships in our communities. And all of this comes about really, it's symptomatic of not having Lord Krishna, Guru and Krishna, in the center of our lives. Not having this humble understanding that aham brahmasmi, and I am an eternal, infinitesimal spiritual spark, servant of the Supreme Lord. And we understand from Lord Chaitanya such an important verse, Trinada pi sunichena, Tarora pi sahistina, amanida manidena kirtaniya sadahari, that one can only chant the holy name constantly if one has this humble heart, if one offers all respects to others. If one sees oneself lower than the straw on the street. It's not easy to do, but we can cultivate this through our sadhana, through our chanting, through hearing this transcendental knowledge, through hearing the pitfalls of pride. So at this point, I would like to open up the discussion to the general devotees here who are on the call, and ask a few questions. And if I'd love to hear from everyone. So the questions are, how does false pride affect our devotional community? How does it affect our relationships? How do we see it manifest in the world as a destructive force? And what are the antidotes to this pride and arrogance? So I would like to open up the floor to anyone and everyone who would like to share some thoughts on this matter. Hey, there's Brahmatirtha, Hare Krishna. So yes, please, anybody jump in and share your thoughts on this. How does false pride affect our devotional community, our relationships? How do we see it manifest in the world as a destructive force? And what are some helpful antidotes to this tendency towards pride and arrogance? Would anybody like to share? Yes, Prabhu.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Call me Prabhu and I got a little bit confused. I'm not used to it. The first thing that came to me was the principle of sharing the heart, and also how we are all struggling to some extent with our devotional service or with following the principles or whatever we are struggling with. And so if we are having that false pride, or we don't want to speak on it or reach out for help, and then it creates in our movement especially this layer of thinking that everybody is doing fine, I am the only person struggling, I am the only bad guy or bad girl or in between. And so then I feel like it just closes our hearts so much, and then we feel so isolated that we eventually are starting to seek, bad association or falling off the path, just because we don't have that support and that ability to really truly share our struggles with others. So yeah, I find that to be one of the most important things that have been coming up to me recently. And the antidote, I guess, is part of the sharing, which is simply having people that we can actually be honest with and being open about our own struggles, and supporting others and being able to hear them not in such a way of like, haha, she is struggling and I'm not, but actually even realizing, let me learn from this person and actually pray to Krishna that if I am in a good place right now, that he's going to support me in this place. Or if I fall down subtly or in other ways, then I actually can pick myself back up, and just also know who to reach out to in those situations. So it's not like all or nothing. It's actually always that in between space of trying to take the next step.
Very beautiful thoughts. Thank you for sharing those. Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is that we're all struggling, every one of us. I don't care where we are in the kind of devotional hierarchy. Everybody's dealing with their stool. Everybody's dealing with their conditioning. Everybody's struggling in some form or fashion because, we're in the material world. It's a place of suffering, and really suffering has a great purpose to help us come to the point of fully depending on the Lord and his devotees. So what I hear you saying is that that we sometimes hesitate to want to share our struggles because we may think that we're the only one going through it. And that kind of keeps us isolated in this box, and it's very unhealthy. So what you said is really wonderful, that when we express this honestly, when there's some transparency, some honest transparency into okay, you also mentioned finding the right person to share it with, because it's very important that there's kind of this loving trust, whoever we're sharing with, that there's a sense that they're accepting us and not judging us. Nobody wants to be, judged. We're already doing enough of that to ourselves. So we want to be able to share with somebody, and when we share, that's kind of, and Prabhupada discusses, Srila Rupa Goswami discusses this in Upadekṣamrita, that this is one of the processes of devotionals, of in increasing our devotion, is being able to share our heart with others, revealing our mind. So revealing our mind to someone that we feel will not judge us. And this kind of takes the burden off our heart. And then when we do this, we find, okay, this person's going through similar things, and pretty much everybody's on some level going through some version of what I'm going through. And it kind of, we feel this burden off of our heart, and we feel that connection. And Krishna then can work through the devotees to speak something that will ease our heart and ease our pain. So and that's also a way to deflect, to dial down the heat of our pride, just by honestly being transparent as to, this is what I'm going through and this is what I'm struggling with. So thanks for sharing that, Prabhu. Other thoughts? Would anybody else like to share some ideas and thoughts on the subject of pride, arrogance, and how it affects us and our communities, and how we see it manifesting in the world? Go ahead.
Oh, no. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, please.
I wanted to share how I think, like, also times when we feel like we're getting irritated and angry or wanting more and more. Usually I've noticed the times that I've become self-centered or selfish, or the times when I consume things, whether it's through my mouth or my ears or my eyes, like things that are not spiritual. They're very either depressing movies or sadness or like horrible music that that's very brainwashing. And also growing up, I only speak for myself, but growing up, I grew up in a very in a home where my brothers and sisters, we had each other and we had each other's love and we cared for each other in the most extended way that my mother taught us. But as far as like behavior from my father, it was a different kind of behavior. So I always felt the need to like protect myself or just focus on me and not worry about others. So I used to have this tendency of say, for instance, if someone said, this is anyone who needs to in school, like we need this textbook, whoever gets it first, whoever gets it, whoever doesn't, you have to deal with it your own. So I would race to the front of the class and not think about others and just grab the book and do whatever I can to get to the book and hold that book so that I won't fail. And I was conditioned, you said it in your words, how we're conditioned. So I wasn't exposed to what love was, like pure love. And that was something that I had to actually learn. And once I started, the Bhakti community really taught me a lot. The yoga community taught me a lot. And my mom, she taught me to some extent what pure love is. So but I had to be exposed to it and feel safe and secure. So I'm guilty of being that selfish being at one point in my life because of how I was conditioned. But most importantly, like the music, what are we listening to throughout our day? Like it really does program us to an extent to where it moves us towards our actions. So thank you so much for a beautiful class and an honest class. Yeah. Thank you,
Andrew, for sharing that. It's interesting you said that, and I think we've all had this experience. We have a certain conditioning. We have some scars, which are impressions from previous lifetimes, from the karmas that we performed in previous lifetimes that lead us to being born in a certain family where there's a certain type of conditioning. And some of those families are dysfunctional. Probably most families on some level are dysfunctional on some level. And so we grow up mimicking those dysfunctional tendencies. It's like you said, your mother was very loving, but you were somewhat afraid of your father. And that kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that kind of fear led you to be like, you got to protect yourself, which kind of led into the like, I got to, me first, right? So, and that's, that's natural. That's natural. Our conditioning plays itself out. And then we come up against the malefic aspects of our conditioning because it doesn't really work in the world. These self-centered tendencies will affect our relationships in the world. And then we suffer, right? And I'm sure you've experienced that. And then we go, whoa, wait a second. What am I doing here? Why how am I messing up these relationships? How am I causing pain and suffering to myself and others? And then we become self-reflective and we go, oh, okay, well, I'm connecting the dots with my conditioning. And we go, okay, how can I navigate the terrain differently? What should my internal consciousness be, mindset, where I, kind of overcome that tendency? And that's what devotional service is about, really. Putting Krishna first, putting the devotees first, caring about the needs of others. And then you said that what impedes that is what we expose ourselves through during the day. Just like you said, music. It can be music, news. We're constantly being bombarded. There's a constant attempt to brainwash the populace according to the ideas of those who are the puppet masters. And we may not see it, just like if you saw the movie The Matrix, everybody's living in the Matrix. They're like, happy as a pig in stool, but not really. They're suffering. And what is the matrix? It's the complexities of the material energy. There's also a kind of a matrix hierarchy in the material world where there are these controlling individuals that want to dominate, and they will brainwash us so as to dumb down the population so we can be subjugated, so we don't question. And ultimately, the ultimate question is, atato brahma gigyasa. Now that I'm in this human form of life, what is the purpose of this life? How can I become relieved from suffering? How can I attain ultimate happiness? How can I attain my eternal divine nature? So therefore, as you said, Angel, that we have to be very discerning in terms of what we expose ourselves to, because some of the things that we expose ourselves to will increase the flame of pride and arrogance, or the subtle coverings of those ignoble qualities. And so therefore we have to be very discerning and self-reflective and associate with those, whether it's what we read, what we hear, who we associate with, those things that will uplift and nourish our soul. Thank you. Any other thoughts on this tendency towards pride and arrogance within ourselves and our communities, how it manifests in the world as a destructive force? Any other thoughts there from the assembled great souls? Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Somebody jump in there. So anyway, both of you, these wonderful ladies, have expressed this mood of just being this honest self-reflection. And the whole devotional path is really about honest self-reflection, because it's an internal path. It manifests externally as our service that we do in the world. But really, it's the real path is inward, because when we're being purified inward, and when we're self-reflective and purifying ourselves through this process of reflection and focused sadhana, our chanting good rounds, hearing daily from the Shastra, from Srila Prabhupada, from other advanced devotees, this process and really cultivating a desire to become pure, to become a pure servant of the Lord, so we can become empowered to affect others, to bring others onto the path of devotion. Because ultimately, that's what we're meant for. All this suffering that we go through is meant to purify us so we can alleviate the suffering of others. That's the duty of the Vaishnava. And that's Prabhupada. Actually, I'm going to read something here. Just we can end with this, and if there's any other comments, just to kind of give a sense of how did Prabhupada manifest that. So I just picked this up last night. This is you can pretty much go everywhere. So this is after, I think, the opening of the Krishna Balaram Mandir. This is one devotee, Udayananda, speaking, and Prabhupada had just spoken to 20,000 people. It was a massive success, and devotees were in ecstasy. And Udayananda was saying, I thought, the day has come. I was thinking, Prabhupada, you did it. You have done this. And now you're preaching to 20,000 people, and you were preaching to all these dignitaries all day long. You've done it. You don't have to do anything else. You've done it. You've done it all. With Prabhupada's accomplishment, there was a fanfare. There was fanfare because he did an amazing, miraculous thing. The fanfare, however, had no effect on Srila Prabhupada, nor was he interested in this type of glorification. He was just interested in glorifying Krishna. So then he goes on that he couldn't, Udayananda was, that he was very ecstatic, but he was also sick and he couldn't sleep. And so he was saying, I was the only person, so that he couldn't, he goes on and says, this went on for quite a while, so I thought I might as well just stay up to chant my japa. I went to the temple and it was close to 2 o'clock in the morning. I was the only person around except for one devotee who was doing the 24-hour kirtan. And he was laying on the mridanga, barely hitting the drum, just muttering Krishna's name. I came out the front of the Krishna Balaram temple and I started to circumambulate. As I came around the back of the temple, I was right next to Srila Prabhupada's room where I saw light on. I reflected how Prabhupada had been preaching tirelessly since 4 o'clock in the morning, and now it's 2 o'clock in the morning the next day. In his room, he had a dictaphone, and I heard him say, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in his explanation of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada was translating the Bhagavatam at 2 in the morning. I was thinking, why? You've already done it all. You've done everything. You've done this huge festival. There's no one around to see you doing this. But he was there translating the Bhagavatam, and he was doing it for us, just like we're reading the Bhagavatam. We're having this class. How did that become possible? By Srila Prabhupada. But he was there translating the Bhagavatam. He was doing it for us. I got to witness Srila Prabhupada's tireless pursuit of giving Krishna consciousness to this planet, to the world, to the universe. And that's why he's the spiritual master of the universe. I'm going to share one anecdote. Prabhupada was with Brahmananda and Chayavana Swami in Africa. And Prabhupada told them, soon, Prabhupada said, so soon I will be leaving. Soon I will be leaving. And Chayavana Swami said to Prabhupada, oh, Prabhupada, you mean to Mauritius? Because they were going to go to Mauritius. And Prabhupada became very grave, and Prabhupada said, no, soon I'll be leaving to preach in Patalaloka, in the hellish planets. And he said, and don't think that you're my only 2 disciples. He said, I have millions of disciples. So that's Srila Prabhupada. Preaching all over the universe, to the lowest of the low, all over. And that's our job, really. Somehow or another, purify ourselves. Somehow or another, deal with our own conditioning, reflect on it, attentively, be attentive in our devotional service for the purpose of being a beacon of light to others, just as Srila Prabhupada did. So, any other thoughts, comments, criticisms? Anyone else? Ananda Bihari, any comments? Someone say something.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience this morning. I was biking to work, and there was this guy on the bike path blocking it. And I was approaching that area, and he acted like I didn't exist, like I wasn't there. But I decided, okay, let me not prove to him that I exist. Let me just quietly go on the sidewalk, passing peacefully, and move on. And when you were talking about pride, it made me think that being proud is very painful. It's like you're riding a big balloon, and any little poke can literally take you down. But if you keep your balloon very, very tiny, very small, you can go in, you can pass. And being proud is very painful. And we don't have to prove that we exist to a random guy on the bike path. It's such a small thing. We don't have to prove anything. We just have to focus on pleasing Srila Prabhupada, our guru, and Krishna knows what's going on. Krishna knows what's going on, who is doing what. So we don't have to prove anything, which is, pride, which is fuel to pride. That's my small, input to this great presentation of yours. Thank you.
That was an awesome experience. I mean, it was an awesome realization, really. Because that's happening to us all the time. Like, who does he think he is? Who is this guy?
He's just a random guy.
Just a random guy. And, like people, road rage, people kill each other over a parking spot. I mean, we were, when I was my wife and I were living in New York, down in this like Stuyvesant town, Stuyvesant town, and 20th, 21st Street there, and 1st and 2nd First Avenue. There was a young couple. There was a guy and a young couple, and they were arguing. Somebody cut into the parking space. The guy got out and was upset, and the guy of the couple, the woman was screaming, young woman screaming at the guy, and then the guy got involved, and the other guy took out a gun and shot him over a frickin' parking space. Excuse my French.
Wow.
But it's just like this. It's like this is the nature of Kali Yuga. That what is the nature of Kali? It's like people become upset over trifles. People will go to war over trifles. People will lose friendship over trifles. But you explain the antidote. Great example of a balloon, keeping the balloon very small, like a needle, just like, no, I'm not this false ego that wants to roar its ugly head at this guy who's being such a jerk. No, you're not a piece of nature now, So, you nipped it in the bud because there's a level of consciousness there. We talk about Krishna consciousness. It means that we're conscious not only of Krishna, but we're conscious of the material and the spiritual side, but we're conscious of our false ego and how it's acting. So we can go, okay, dial that down, get on the right path, and that's just what you did. So I want to commend you for that. And thank you for sharing that. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I don't have to prove Krishna sees what's going on. That's
Yeah.
why worship says like that. Krishna sees what's going on. I don't have to prove.
Yeah, he knows. He's got the ultimate supercomputer. He's the ultimate surveillance, but his surveillance is it's like, he knows when you've been good or bad, so be good for goodness sake. So Krishna, he's seeing it all, and then he's inspiring us from within. He's giving us these little, you can hear Krishna speaking to us from within. Oftentimes, or speaking through another devotee, or another can speak through anyone, some bum on the street. Actually, there's a beautiful story. Sudama, who has left this world, he was lamenting, and to Srila Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, you're with us now, you clear up our problems, but when you leave, what will we do? What will we do? How will we go on? Prabhupada said, I will never leave. He said, I can come to you in dreams and I will speak to you. He said, I can speak through anyone, even a non-devotee. You just have to hear. So we just have to be conscious and Krishna conscious. If we're conscious and Krishna conscious, then Krishna will guide us. And eventually, sooner than later, we'll go back home, back to Godhead. Haribol.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Badarayan Prabhu. Thanks everyone for coming in, for commenting, for listening. We'll see you again soon, Badarayan Prabhu.
Thank you for allowing me
to classes.
Oh, just I'm honored to speak. I really don't know anything. I don't know Jack, but I'm just happy to be with you all. All right. Haribol.
Okay. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Remember Krishna. Krishna knows what's going on. Remember who we're trying to please.
That's right. Thank you, Ananda Bihari, for sharing that. Haribol.
All right. Hare Krishna Prabhu.